Hello, beautiful vegans. Welcome to Empowered Vegans, the show that inspires and empowers vegans to live their best lives. I'm Mariquita Solis, vegan empowerment coach, and each week I feature leading experts in the vegan and plant-based world. And we share inspirational stories, practical tips, and empowering conversations. My mission is to support the vegan community in living a fulfilled, joyful life while making a positive impact on the world. As a transformational coach, I also offer coaching programs to help vegans navigate challenges and create a life that aligns with their values. And today I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Leigh Ettinger, Dr. Herbivore, to the show. He's a wonderful friend of mine and an inspiration to children and parents alike. So, welcome, Dr. Leigh.
Thank you so much for having me, Mariquita. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. And everyone, please let us know who's watching. I see JJ is watching. Thanks for watching. And she's saying she is sharing this with her parents, and she thinks it's so important to start our children off right. Amen to that. So we're going to get a great foundation here on what we need to do, what we can do to inspire children to eat in a way that they can thrive and that they can handle possibly pressures or fast food. I mean, we're going to get some good information here because I would be in the dark. I don't have any kids or grandkids, so I do have nephews, and I'm not doing very well in that aspect in inspiring them to eat healthy. But nevertheless, we're going to tackle this issue. So, Dr. Leigh, first I'd love to know what what inspired you to change your eating habits.
Cool. So I'm really into cycling, and back in the summer of 2014, I was watching my cycling videos on YouTube, and this cycling video popped up in the suggestions feed. It was funny stuff that cyclists say. So I watched it, and it was really funny. And I'm looking and seeing what this content creator has to more entertaining cycling stuff. And it was a guy named Dorian Ryder. Have you heard of Dorian Ryder?
No.
Oh, yeah. So he is a vegan in Australia, and he's biking all over the place, eating mangoes and rice. And when I was looking for what I thought would be more like comedy skits, like he was doing, and what I found was him talking a lot about nutrition and how he cycles so well as a plant-based cyclist. So here I am, 42 years old, and I'm thinking, maybe I wonder if this could help my cycling. So I started to look into it, started to make some changes in my own eating, look at the documentaries, start to read the books, and I can't put a particular date, but sometime in the summer of 2014, I went wholly plant-based and reaped the benefits. I mean, my weight went down. I lost 20 pounds, which certainly is going to help your cycling when you're biking uphill. And my blood pressure, which was a little elevated, came down. My cholesterol, which had always been a little elevated, came down. I had more energy, and so it just became a no-brainer. I was like, this is great for me. I started to share this information with my patients, and they were starting to benefit too. And yeah, so my original inspiration was the cycling, but certainly what's helped me really stick with it is learning more about the animal welfare issues, the environmental issues, and the racial justice issues. And so it's really been easy for me to stick with it because of all these other benefits, not just to me and my own health and my cycling, but thinking more globally about how eating this way impacts others. So that's where I'm at. It's been coming up on 9 years then. This summer it'll be 9 years.
Oh wow, that's great to celebrate. Yes, definitely. And so when you were, let's just say when you were growing up, did you think about vegetarian or vegan or eating this way, eating whole foods, plant-based, or did you ever have an encounter with any people like that, or did you think they were weird like I did?
I have two funny stories. Apparently, when I was a toddler, my parents told me that I pointed to the food on my plate and I said, "Why is this called chicken?" And they explained to me that this chicken on my plate is the same chicken in the bird. And so I said I didn't want to eat it anymore. And apparently I lasted a week not eating chicken. So I did have that initial thought. And, people really do talk about how we are raised and almost conditioned to eat these animal products just because they're everywhere and everyone believes that's what we need to grow up healthy. So there was that initial impression I had. But then I didn't think about it again until I was in college. I met a vegan in college, my first year of college, and he was talking about veganism, and I was like, okay, good for you. That's great. But the funny thing is, a few months, or not funny, but a few months later, I saw him in the dining hall cafeteria at breakfast, and he was eating bacon and eggs, and I was like, what happened here? I thought you were vegan. I thought you didn't eat that stuff. And he was like, yeah, I was trying to make a point on campus, but no one seemed to care. So now I was like, okay, I understand why you're eating bacon eggs, but you went out and bought a leather jacket. The guy was wearing a leather jacket, and I was like, that seems odd. And he said, no. I had this from before I went vegan. I just never got rid of it. So he felt comfortable wearing the leather jacket again. But that was the last time we talked about such things.
Well, that's
And then I went through all medical school. I went to Tufts University School of Medicine, which has a pretty prestigious nutrition school, and I was even a participant in nutrition studies because the nutritionists would come to the researchers would come to our medical school class and say, hey, we're paying $50 if you eat this and we test your blood, or we're paying $70 if you don't eat that and we test your blood. So I participated in nutrition studies for some cash. But the nutrition classes that we had were basically stuff you don't see anymore, like all these deficiencies, niacin deficiency, this and that. It was all about the strange and rare deficiencies that, yes, it's important for a doctor to know, but not necessarily what we're seeing day to day in our clinics. So, and then didn't think about it again until during life.
Well, it's interesting that vegan, that you still remember that incident with him in college.
It was humorous. The guy went out. I'm like, I thought he bought a leather jacket. That seemed to be the opposite thing to do, but yeah.
Interesting. Yes. Well, we got Heather here watching also. Let's see. And she says she has 4 kids, ages 16, 11, 10, and 6. And I've been looking forward to this. Yeah. Let us know if you have any questions. And someone is saying, hi, lovely vegans. This is a great subject. Proud to be present. Well, we're glad that you're here watching. Well, I have a lot of questions. So what about your family and your own kids? How was that when you decided and when you saw the light, right? Were they on the journey with you, or how was their journey?
Yeah, so I had 3 kids in elementary school at the time. And first I started to make these changes and my wife was like, well, what are you doing? And so it was a little perplexing to her for me all of a sudden to be making such changes. But I got her on board. We were watching the documentaries together. She's a big fan of Rich Roll. Rich Roll has a podcast. He's an ultra endurance athlete, and he's got a lot of inspirational guests on his podcast. So that really helped inspire her. And so my 3 kids were in elementary school, and they kind of didn't notice. It took them 2 weeks to notice that we had changed the milk. That they're like, why is this box different all of a sudden? And they were down with it. They were cool with it. I mean, they were young, and this was the food that we were putting out in front of them without making a big deal about it. And then, so we were in New York City, and the middle schools had out lunch. So the students can leave the middle school campus, and the local restaurants will have a quickie meal for the kids. And so that's when my son started eating meat again because he was out with his buddies. Now I have 3 teenagers. They're in middle school and high school, and we have plant-based at home. 2 of my kids eat cheese, dairy cheese, because they just don't like the plant-based cheeses. So we allow that. That's okay with us. They eat plant-based at home, and then my son still eats meat when he's out with his friends. But at home, it's predominantly plant-based for them.
Yeah, and it's very delicate situation here, where you don't want to say no, because then if you say no, then they're going to want it more, right? So you have to you have to tread lightly. So
They're teenagers. They're developing their sense of identity. They're, sometimes they want to rebel against their parents, and for some kids that might be smoking, but for other kids, it might be turning vegan, or in our family it might be eating the meat. So, but we got to let them grow. They're going to be out of our home in the next few years, sadly. Hopefully give them the inspiration. But what I really like to do is just lead by example. I mean, my kids see the chronic diseases that their friends' parents have. And my wife and I, thank goodness, are healthy and vibrant, and trying to lead by example and show the energy that we have. I still enjoy cycling. My wife's a big rock climber. And so we're just very active in our community and trying to lead by example.
that's wonderful. And do any of the parents come over and talk to you or ask tips?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes we get some questions. Yeah, I wish it were more often, but more like what can we serve you when you come over for a gathering? Like people are good enough, kind enough to check with us. But in this New Paltz town what we live in, it's actually a very active community. There's like the world famous Shawnigan climbing ridges near here. So a lot of my kids' teachers are climbers, and the cycling around here is amazing. So it's a very active community. All the restaurants have plant-based options, and there are several plant-based restaurants. So at least in this niche of the world, it's not unacceptable or a surprise. I do hear from people around the country about how they can't find a plant-based restaurant, they can't find even plant-based foods, and everyone looks at them like they have another arm. But around here, at least, it's not too foreign.
Well, you're lucky. Definitely. Yeah. And in Atlanta here, there's a lot of options, but I do a lot of cooking at home now because I wasn't always like this. But no, I feel a lot better and I get excited about vegetables now. I mean, your taste buds change. So I don't want to, I used to like see nachos and just be like, of course, drooling. And now I look at it and think, yuck. Now I just see it like, oh my gosh, that's clogging up my whole life. And, it makes you so sluggish. That cheese and junk, ugh, I know, I don't know. But yeah, things have changed. And, well, things are really changing here with our times and the kids. What do you see now that's changed in like the last 20 years with our children?
Yeah, unfortunately, the obesity epidemic is affecting them. When I was in medical school in the 90s, there were two kinds of diabetes, type 1 diabetes that the kids got, and I learned about adult onset diabetes, which the adults got due to obesity. But now it's no longer called adult onset diabetes because the children are getting it, and I've seen kids down to age 8 with what's now called type 2 diabetes. So yeah, unfortunately, over the decades since I graduated from medical school, we're seeing more and more of these adult illnesses affect the kids. So I practiced as a pediatric kidney doctor for 16 years at a major medical center in northern New Jersey. And as a kidney doctor, I would get referrals of kids with high blood pressure because often in the pediatric age group that can be due to a kidney problem. So the pediatrician would do their child checks, find high blood pressure, and send the patient to me. And I would rule out a kidney problem, a heart problem, a hormone problem, and I'd be sitting there with a young person with a very elevated body mass index. And that's when I would start to talk about nutrition. And after learning myself about the plant-based diet and the benefits for blood pressure, actually helping families make the transition if they were interested in more plant-based eating. Some families are like, I want my pizza, just give me the pill. But other families are like, well, what can we do about this? I don't want to be on medicine. And that's really gives me great pleasure to help them. No one really ever thanked me for writing them a prescription, but when I was able to help them change their diet, change their lifestyle, and either come off of a blood pressure medicine or not need to start a blood pressure medicine, that's when the families would thank me. And that gave me a lot of good professional satisfaction.
Yeah, I bet. And I mean, you have a good point here. I mean, the whole family is eating that way. So, I mean, that makes it even harder. And who is more resistant, the parents or the children, would you say sometimes?
Very mixed. I remember once I was introducing this concept to a family, and the mom sitting there in the corner scowling at me. So I called her a few days later. I was like, "Oh, do you have any questions that you want to go over?" And she was like, "You vegetarians, you keep your cult eating to yourself. Don't try to push that on my family." I'm like, "Okay, well, thanks. Have a nice day." Um, but then I'd have other situations where the family would come back and the child would have the teenager usually would have made no changes, and the mom's like, oh, he stops for fast food on the way home every day for school, he's a lost cause. But I've gone plant based. The mom's like, I've come down dress sizes. I want to talk to you about the cashew cheese recipe I found online. And like the parent is the one who's gotten the benefits and made the changes. So I've had a lot of different responses. Um,
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's exciting though. I mean, I mean, it's hard for the kids. You never know. I mean, sometimes, unfortunately, people have to be hit in the head to make a change, and which is sad, but yes. So, but that's great if the mom makes the change, because whenever maybe that child is ready, then he can go back to the mom, and then they could cycle back to you even.
right.
So definitely. And so when people are piling in sugar, what does that do? I mean, what is that really hurting the most?
Well, sugar and fat in the diet, I kind of call those like the hidden dangers. There was a recent study, it was 2009, where researchers looked at 85,000 products in the supermarket, and 73% of them had some form of caloric sweetener, some kind of sugar in them. So 74%, that's like every 3 out of 4 items that you pull off the shelf have some sugar added into it. So it's really a hidden danger. People just don't know it. And these are products that are labeled natural or organic or GMO free or something like that, but they are loaded with sugar. So I do worry about that, those hidden calories. And then again, that's why I recommend that the families eat the whole plants. Those are the foods that don't have labels, that don't have the added sugar, which can be a risk factor for gaining weight. And then the same with the added oils, in that families with their cooking or the products can get a lot of extra calories unknowingly with these very calorie dense oils. Like you look at just rice that if you cook it, a bowl of rice might have 200 calories, but people were putting just a teaspoon of oil in their cooking to keep the rice kind of less humpy, but that oil might add another 100 calories. That little bit of oil might add another 100 calories. And looking at the two bowls of rice, they look exactly the same, and they fill you up the same amount. It's the same weight of food, but one has just absorbed water, and one has absorbed the water and the oil, and is so much more calories. So that's what I try to work with the families, is finding these hidden calories that if you take them out, they're not going to necessarily change your satisfaction with the food and your satiety with the foods, but you can easily take these extra calories out without feeling deprived.
Yes, and I've been cooking with vegetable broth now. I mean, I used to think it was crazy for people to not use oil like that. Just like I thought, well, it's natural for us to drink milk, and it's natural for us to use oil. And then yesterday I learned more about bees, and I thought, well, it's natural for, I mean, now I don't use honey, but I just thought, oh, well, the bees don't need the honey, but I don't know what I was thinking. It's like that's their food. So, I mean, it's amazing when you wake up to these realities, right? Like that brainwashing that I thought I had to use a lot of oil, and now using vegetable broth, it's so much better. Everything's lighter, and it's amazing that just like losing like 15 pounds when I stopped using oil, which was incredible. And I never knew, I mean, when I never thought about how calorie dense it is. Now I cook like my potatoes in the air fryer or in a little pan with vegetable broth, and they taste just as good. So it's amazing. But let's talk about potatoes. So do they break down differently, or is that going to break down as sugar, or do they have, I mean, like, is it fiber and sugar, or is that all sugar? What's the breakdown with those?
Potatoes are great. I love potatoes. And yeah, they have some sugar in them, not a lot, but mostly it's the fiber that's very filling and slowly digests and gives you. But potatoes are full of also vitamins and minerals. Have you heard of SpudFit? You know
Is that
SpudFit?
is that the guy that ate potatoes for a year or something?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm a big fan of him. It's funny. I actually presented his story at a medical conference just because it's just so wild. It was funny because the conference host wanted me to get permission because they thought SpudFit was my patient. They're like, "Well, you're talking about this patient of yours. You need their permission to talk about the patient." I was like, "No, no, no. Look, it's all over YouTube. He's not my patient." But I reached out and I got permission from him anyway. And he's very very kind and happy to share his story always. But yeah, in case your audience doesn't know, so this is a teacher from Australia. Again, I'm getting inspired by the Australians. But back in 2015, he weighed something like 330 pounds. He was very depressed. He's sad that he weighed so much and had no control over his eating. And he learned about the plant-based diet, and he felt like it still didn't have. He didn't trust himself enough to make the decisions of what to eat on the plant-based diet. So he gave himself, like so many dieters, he gave himself an ultimatum, and he said for all of 2016, he's only going to eat potatoes. And so he woke up every day and ate. He estimates like 7 or 8 pounds of potatoes per day. He is a large volume eater, and that calculates to about 2,400 calories per day, which for him was enough to encourage weight loss. And he lost 120 pounds over the year. He stuck with it, which is amazing. And people online were congratulating him at the end of the year, like, "Wow, what great willpower you have." And he said something very wise. He says, "No, no, no. I don't have good willpower. That's how I got to 330 pounds. I don't have willpower." But what he did was he took the decision making out of the day. So it's estimated we make about 200 decisions about food every day: what we're going to cook, what we're going to purchase, what we're going to eat, what we're not going to eat. And he had no decisions to make every day. His main decision was like, am I going to boil the potatoes or bake the potatoes or microwave? That was his decision for the day. And he found that very relieving that he was able to not be as stressed about food and maintaining a diet. He stuck with a decision that he made once and had the discipline. His videos are still online, and he actually has a coaching program now. You can I'm gonna plug him because he was so kind to me. But yeah, people can sign up and he has a coaching program online and learn about his history and how he approaches healthier eating. And after the year, he went to the whole food plant-based diet, and he still seems online on his now rare YouTube appearances to be fit and to maintain the weight loss, which is extraordinary.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And that decision making is important because they say, I mean, you only have a certain amount of, in the end of the day, after you're worn down, your decision making, you become more tired and tired. And that's why it's easier to say, oh, forget it. I'll have that chocolate cake. Right. And if you're not resting and so you got to, that's why they say like the top CEOs wear the same clothes every day, right? They don't.
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
It's a concept called decision fatigue.
All right.
And that's why the candy bars are at the checkout aisle, because the supermarket knows that you've made all these, you've looked at labels, you've thought about every decision as you pull up items off the shelf. That by the time you get to the checkout counter, you're fatigued from all the decisions, and then it becomes less of a decision just to grab a candy bar because you're hungry. So that's decision fatigue. But if you're like Mr. Spudfit and you've made the decision to only eat potatoes, it's as if the candy bars don't exist. They're not potatoes. And going whole food plant based, again, those are highly processed. Those have milk in them. The chocolates, it's as if those foods don't exist. All of a sudden, the supermarket square footage is smaller. I'm only going to shop on these aisles. These other aisles don't even exist because they don't have food for me. So that's one of the benefits of the plant based diet, is that you're not constantly negotiating with yourself as you try to practice moderation or portion control. It's you've decided not to cross this line, and then the line just doesn't get crossed.
Yeah, and it's interesting how many new ways you can eat. I mean, because I do want something sweet, but now I'll make those little oatmeal balls with maybe raisins and carrots and then bananas, try to hold them together. But I mean, and that's very satisfying. I don't have to go eat a whole pint of ice cream, which makes me kind of crazy right now to think about it. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's a journey, right? I mean, to even think that I would make these oatmeal balls or that I would even let go of oil, I mean, that would have been something I would have said, no way. But yeah, everybody's on their own path. Look, you have a lot of fans over here. I want to show. So Tammy's saying, thank you for being the changing group of physicians, Dr. Ettinger.
Oh, thank you, Tammy.
Yes. And then we've got someone agreeing with leading by example. My kids have seen me actively fighting to overcome a long list of chronic immune conditions. I'm no longer on medication. And we talk about the impact of food. That's wonderful. Yes, that's inspirational. And then here's another fan, Louise. Thank you for interviewing Dr. Ettinger today. Great information. Thanks for watching, everybody. We really got a lot of, please let us know your questions because there's so much to learn in the way we can help our children here. So let's talk about surgeries because something crazy happened recently, didn't they? I don't know. You tell me about the recommendation about, is it bariatric or surgery?
Yeah, so in January of this year, the American Academy of Pediatrics came out with brand new clinical practice guidelines for pediatricians of how they should be managing childhood obesity. And this was the first of such instructions, all past guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatrics said watchful waiting. The kids are going to outgrow. But it's become evident that watchful waiting is not going to work. So they recommended 3 things for children struggling with obesity. One was intensive health behavior and lifestyle treatment. And unfortunately, they didn't quite define what that meant, except that it should happen frequently, up to 26 times per year. And it should, the usual things like less soda or no soda, more activity and stuff like that. And I actually was in a meeting with one of the authors of the guidelines. And I asked her, I said, I've been hearing since I was a kid in the 80s, drink less soda, exercise more. Why do you think that this guideline now in 2023 is going to have any different result? And her response was like, well, you might have heard that once from your pediatrician, but now we're recommending it 26 times per year. I'm like, okay, well, maybe that'll work. So very vague on the actual nutrition and lifestyle treatment, but that it should happen a lot. And then the other recommendation was weight loss medicines down to age 12. And the other recommendation was that bariatric surgery should be considered down to age 13. And this was new. This was quite shocking to a lot of people. A lot of even insurance companies were shocked. They're like, well, we don't necessarily feel the need to pay for these kind of medicines and surgeries for kids. So a lot of pediatricians were shocked. Parents concerned that the next time they go to the pediatrician, they're going to be operated on or something like that. So it came out to a lot of fanfare and concerns from various groups. So that's where we're at. It just goes to show that the obesity crisis is, like so many health problems, is affecting the kids. And I almost don't blame the American Academy of Pediatrics. I like the expression, like if you give someone a hammer, then every problem becomes a nail. So, this is what we learned in medical school, of how to prescribe medicines and how to do surgeries. So if you have a childhood obesity problem, then that's the tools that we should use. So I kind of don't blame the American Academy of Pediatrics for applying that tool to this problem. But pediatric obesity seems more like maybe needs a screwdriver. It needs a little different kind of tool. And I was just disappointed that there wasn't more information about the nutrition. And I asked the author, I said, why not more information? Why not about more about the plant-based diet? And she had a valid point, is that there just are not a lot of studies, uh, going over uh, what the different diets, whether it's low carb or Mediterranean or plant-based, uh, how effective they are for children. There's even like very few studies for adults. Unfortunately, when I'm talking about, like, there are lots of observational studies that look at populations and large groups over time eating different ways. But what's considered a real robust kind of study is a comparative study, an intervention study, where you're kind of adjusting things and seeing uh, more animal products, more plant products, things like that. And so her valid point, and I'll give her that, is that there just aren't a lot of studies right now. And my question is, are there going to be studies? Like, who's interested in funding such a study? Certainly the drug companies and the surgery uh, are being studied because they are potentially profitable for someone or companies. So, but nothing's particularly profitable about studying the plant-based diet. So will there ever be studies? I don't know.
That seems crazy. And the fact that we take studies on animals and then they say, oh, okay, because of the study on an animal, now this is what we're going to, correlate it to us. But then we're a human, we're an adult. Why doesn't it still factor into the children? Why do we believe more in studies that animals, they perform on animals and link them to ourselves? Do you know what I'm saying? I'm having a hard time saying it, but.
Yeah, in a perfect world, we'd have, maybe AI will help with this. Maybe we'll have better predictive models or computer simulations. Um, Maybe that will save us. But for now, we do the best we can.
Yeah, that's all we can do, right? And thank God you're out there because I mean, you're just a tiny little diamond out there, in this big sand. Yeah, you're giving hope for people. So definitely. So let's look at we got a question here. I put 3 of my kids in public school this year. I'd love ideas for packing school lunches other than packing leftovers. Best quick, easy health tips.
Yeah, I recommend there are lots of websites and Pinterest pages and things like that about people that make suggestions for school lunches. I've seen a bunch online. Um, yeah, my kids, they mostly pack leftovers. We have thermoses for soups. I've brought a soup today, and lots of like rice and beans and stuff like that. But you gotta pack the kids a lot because we want to make sure the whole plant foods, or in general plant-based eating, is such high fiber, high water content foods that we want to make sure that the kids are getting enough calories to grow. So it depends on your kids' particular preferences, but yeah, probably a good idea to pack a school lunch. I have had a lot of parents with concerns about the quality of the school lunches at their kids' schools, and then also be careful. I had one family where the mom was packing a healthy school lunch, and the child was eating that lunch and getting the free school lunch. So the obesity problem might have been because the child, we learned, was eating 2 school lunches, the packed and the provided one. So if yeah, I guess talk to your kids and see what they're actually doing at school. But yeah, I don't have any specific recommendations except that there are a lot of good resources out there online of suggestions for school lunches that your kid will like, hopefully.
Thanks. So let's take another one here. Um, do you believe it's okay to show kids some of the documentaries or plant-based or vegan books like Game Changers, for example? And if so, which ones?
Yeah, certainly. These documentaries, they're not cartoons. They're very dense and not necessarily geared for kids. But if a child is interested and of the maturity to understand, then yes, by all means. I like to find out what the teenagers are into and point them in the right direction for the documentaries. The athletes, yes, I highly encourage Game Changers. or if the child is worried about this or that disease, movies like Forks Over Knives or What the Health. Yeah, certainly. Another suggestion for the child who's interested is visiting an animal sanctuary, a farm sanctuary. Those can be very powerful. So many kids don't ever meet a cow or see a chicken live or pet a pig. So to actually go and visit a farm sanctuary where these animals are being cared for lovingly and can be a powerful experience for the appropriate child to learn about why you are encouraging these food choices.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Make the real connection here. This is a living being because we're so disconnected. Definitely. So, what about did your kids ever get made fun of for the way they ate?
No, I don't remember them ever coming home with that concern. I'll have to ask them.
Yeah,
My
well,
yeah, yeah. I don't, yeah, I don't think so. No,
good.
good question. I wonder, yeah. But no, I don't remember them ever coming home and complaining.
Well, that's good to hear. And plus, they had great. I mean, it seems like if somebody made fun of them, they would say, "Look at my dad; he's in great shape." Look at my mom. I mean, they could. That would be something good.
Will your dad go for a bike ride with my dad?
Right. I bet your dad can take mine, or my dad can take yours. That's funny. All right, here's another question. Balancing my weight loss goals with meeting the calorie needs for my kids. I'm thinking offering more calorie dense foods at meal times, but balance my plate with the lower calorie dense foods.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. If you're not concerned about your child's weight, then yeah, we need to make sure they're not running a calorie deficit. So kids, they have small stomachs. That's why they might like at mealtime just grab a few bites and then run away. And that's why they're so interested in snacking is because their stomachs fill up quickly and then empty quickly too. So their 3 meals a day doesn't necessarily meet or fit with a growing child's physiology that they're more like grazers. And to make sure that if a child is filling up on these high fiber, high water content foods, that they might not be getting enough calories. So I, if obesity is not a concern, then even these more processed plant foods, the plant-based burgers, plant-based cheeses, plant-based ice creams, again, if obesity is not a problem, then I'm not against those for the growing child to make sure that they are meeting their caloric and nutrient needs.
Yeah, but then you got to watch out for yourself. If you're doing that for the kids, and then you're the mom, and you're yeah juggling it. Getting the right balance. So
Yeah,
you
yeah. I didn't say it was going to be easy, but
know.
those are my thoughts.
Right. Well, let's talk about what about kids, and I have some that I'm thinking of, um, that are not getting basically any nutrition. I mean, that are eating junk all day long. I mean, we're talking about, well, desserts that are called, Danishes, which is a dessert, or a muffin, which is, oh my gosh. I mean, how many those muffins that people buy at the store? I mean, how much sugar is in those? Would that be like the whole thing for the day?
Probably, yeah. What I try to educate families about is that this isn't the child being bad. Um, this is evolution at work. So we have this drive for calories. All of our senses are geared toward seeking out high calorie foods because 100,000 years ago, calories were so scarce that it was an evolutionary advantage to be able to find and eat the high calorie foods that were available. And what's changed is our environment. So the child eating the Danish and all these highly processed foods, the child's brain is thinking it's making the right decision for survival. It's best to pack on some padding, best to pack on some pounds for the upcoming winter. That would have helped someone survive 100,000 years ago. But the problem is that winter's not coming, that the calories are constantly available. And so what the problem is trying to convince people that now what their brain thinks was the right decision for survival has become problematic. And that's a hard concept for a lot of people, maybe to understand intellectually, but emotionally, that it's time to, you know, fight that survival instinct and hundreds of thousands of years of instincts that we're just in the wrong environment basically now. And so those instincts are counterproductive. So the child's not doing anything wrong in their mind. They're doing the right thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we don't have to go run and hunt or, hunt down our food or hide it like squirrels for the rest of the year. I mean, we have food
Right.
readily available, right? So yeah, definitely.
Well, we're hiding it, but we're hiding it on our body is where we're caching those calories. But it's become a problem.
Yeah, it's a problem. And what about diabetes? So it's fat that really causes diabetes. Can you explain about that?
Yeah, yeah. This is a tough concept. That was actually shown way back in 1927 that there was a study on medical students. Again, a long tradition of experimenting on medical students. But they had the medical students eat a very high fat diet for 2 days. These are healthy medical students. Eat a high fat diet for 2 days, and or eat a high sugar diet for 2 days. And after the 2 days, they gave them an oral glucose tolerance test. They said, drink this drink of high sugar. We're going to measure your blood test. And surprisingly, the students who were on the high fat diet for 2 days, their blood sugars went way up high. And the students that were on the high sugar diet maintained a bump in blood sugar, but then it normalized quickly. So much more sensitivity to the sugar. They were able to process it, but not when they had the high fat diet. And this was perplexing for many decades until the another study that was done in the 90s that looked at it was a nuclear medicine study that looked at how much fat was in the muscles. So these droplets of fat in the muscles, intramyocellular lipids. And there's a direct relation. The more fat you had in your muscles, the more insulin resistant you were. That it was harder for the insulin, which is the key that unlocks the door for the cell. It was harder for the insulin to unlock that door and allow and escort the sugar from the bloodstream into the cell. And it kind of makes sense because if the muscle cell is full of fat, it can use that fat for energy. So that particular muscle cell will like say, I'm good. I got fat here for energy. I don't need that passing sugar. Let the cell downstream use that sugar for energy. I'm good. I'm going to use the fat here for energy. So you can see that the fat in the muscle is the cause, for good reason, of insulin resistance, meaning insulin can't get the muscle to uptake the sugar. And we see higher and higher blood sugars in the bloodstream, and that is a diagnosis of diabetes when you just have that high blood sugars. And the pancreas is there pumping out more and more insulin to try to like yell at the muscle cell, like, hey, you really need to take this, you really need to take this sugar in. And the muscle is like, no way, I'm good. I'm running on the fat. So as we take fat out of the diet, the fat and losing weight and the fat comes out of the muscle, that's what improves the insulin sensitivity. And then the insulin can come by and unlock the door and allow the sugar to go into the muscle cell, and the muscle is happy to use sugar for energy. That's trying to explain insulin resistance and diabetes. But it's nice if I have slides and can show you in picture, but that's my verbal explanation of diabetes.
Well, thank you. No, I understand it better now. I mean, every time I hear it, I get one step closer to really understanding it, So let me see what we got. Another comment here. Many people who are vegan became afraid from the moment when they have children and risk to drift away from vegan. How can we take their doubts away? They think there's still no people who grew up completely vegan. There is much doubt until now. Yes, I mean, yeah, that people think that we can't do that, or you're hurting your children. What would you say to someone that said that their doctor said that that they're hurting their kids if they go plant-based and don't eat meat? What would you tell that person?
Yeah, so I had this exact challenge in my clinic in that I was starting to advise families for their blood pressure, for weight loss, about the plant-based diet, and they come back and say, well, my doctor says I need to drink milk. I need to eat meat for protein. And so what I've done is several things. So since 2017, I've been giving grand rounds at pediatric hospitals around New York and New Jersey. I actually have one coming up in Queens on Monday. So I've been talking to student doctors about the benefits of the plant-based diet and trying to educate them about the benefits of the plant-based diet. Not that they necessarily need to go out and start preaching like me, but at least when they meet a family that's plant-based, they know how to interact with that family. Let's not talk about you need milk. Let's talk about you need vitamin B12, those kind of things. So I've been educating, learning doctors, residents, and doctors in the community about the plant-based diet to hopefully make an impact and make it easier for plant-based families to talk to their doctor about nutrition or if they have questions. So at least their doctor has some information. But then to help the families also, I've made an e-course. So on my website are links to e-courses that I've made. I am licensed in New York and New Jersey. I have a telehealth practice working with families in New York and New Jersey, but for families elsewhere, the availability of these e-courses. So one e-course I made was how to make the switch, how to transition your family to plant-based eating. And we've seen some questions about that, and I go into more details and give more resources about how to switch your family, how to talk to your teenagers, how to maybe I should put on how to pack a lunch. Maybe I should put that in there. But if you take the e-course, there is an opportunity at the end to make suggestions for other lessons. So how to switch your family to plant-based eating. I have an e-course about pediatric obesity and specifically using the plant-based diet for pediatric obesity, and then an e-course also about how to nourish your child about plant-based eating. So that gets to the concern here, like how do you know that your child is going to be okay? And so I go over the nutrients, I go over how to use Chronometer, which is a great app that can track your nutrients. And there are a few online guides on how to use this program, but none specifically for plant-based kids. So I made a guide that's an e-course. And also how to talk to your doctor about, if your doctor has no clue about the plant-based diet, say, hey, I would like to check my child's B12 level, things like that, because B12 is so important. So really a good resource, I hope, for families with questions and concerns like you. How do I know I'm doing it right? And I'm hoping the e-courses are all to give these concerns a answer and to give families confidence to raise their families, raise their kids plant-based. So that's my plug. Thanks for letting me share about those e-courses.
Yeah, plug away anything you want to. But let me ask you this. So what vitamins? I mean, so we need to take B12. And why do we need to take B12? And what else do we need to take?
This is the big one. We need to take B12 because our food is too clean. So vitamin B12, most vitamins are made by plants, from energy from the sun or nutrients from the ground. But specifically, vitamin B12 is made by a soil bacteria. And our plants are too clean. They're triple washed or they're grown hydroponically. And we're washing our hands all the time. And so we're not getting exposed to this bacteria, this good bacteria that's around that makes vitamin B12. So if you're going to only eat plants, then you're at risk for a vitamin B12 deficiency. Now the animals have vitamin B12 in their muscles because they live in dirt. They're fed dirty grains and corn and soybeans and things like that. And sometimes they're even supplemented. So if you're eating animal products, that's how you're getting your vitamin B12. But if you're not eating any animal products, it's very important to get vitamin B12 because there can be a whole host of symptoms like nerve pains in your extremities, weakness, anemia, and some of these can be permanent. So you don't want to mess with a vitamin B12 deficiency. And it's a very inexpensive supplement that you can buy anywhere. And they even come like little gummies you can give the younger kids, or drops you can give the younger kids. But it's important to get the vitamin B12, and so that's something I stress and emphasize. And then the other nutrients, again, I go in the e-course all about all of those, but that's the main one I worry about. I don't worry about protein. That's the big nutrient of concern. I don't worry about that for a long list of reasons. And I don't worry so much about calcium either. Where does the cow get the calcium to put in its milk? It eats grass. Now, we're eating the grass too. Calcium is a mineral. It's a rock in the ground. The plants absorb it. Iron is a metal in the ground. The plants absorb it. So um, with just a few tweaks, you can check out what your child's eating and make adjustments as needed. And worst case scenario, and I tell this to the pediatrician, it's like, take a calcium supplement, take an iron supplement if you're that worried with your B12 supplement or your omega 3s or vitamin D or all these things. It's like you don't need to eat the meat to get the iron. It comes in a supplement form too. So that's my message.
All right, well, that's great. Let me ask you this. Do you have any kids that are excited about the way they feel when they change eating, or any really, any kids that come to you and tell you their success?
It's nice, yeah, and that's very professionally rewarding for me. Yes, but I especially like working with the athletes because they seem to have a little extra motivation, extra initiative, extra discipline because they can start to see results. One of the reasons working with kids about their high blood pressure, no 15-year-old is worried about their blood pressure. That's a concept that's so abstract. Oh, this might be a problem in 50 years. Yeah, okay. No teenager's worried about those numbers, but a teenager might be worried about how they perform in their sport, and when they can start to see in more immediate benefits, then that's nice. Or 60% of it's estimated 60% of children with obesity have sleep apnea, so they're not getting a good restful night's sleep. So once you can start to lose some of the weight and get a good night's sleep, that's a nice immediate reward too. So yeah, it's nice to see the feedback. Um, some kids don't know that they're supposed to be pooping every day, and they're like, oh, I started eating this way, and now I'm pooping every day, and I kind of feel better just because I'm pooping every day. So like little things like that, or acne getting better. I'm talking about like immediate benefits that the young people can really latch on to, rather than thinking about heart disease in 50 years or this or that condition that they're avoiding. That's much more abstract. So I try to work when I'm working with the young people about the immediate benefits, and it's nice when they come back with such positive results.
Yeah, I mean, I think about game changers and how they say that the recovery rate's faster. So why is the recovery rate faster? I mean, I can see that fat would clog everything up, but can you give us a better reason?
Yeah, I have some guesses. It's a very high carbohydrate diet, so it's like like a marathon runner is carbo loading the few days before the big race. But when you're eating whole plants, you're getting a lot of great carbohydrates. So it's like every day is a carbo loading marathon day, and you're just full of energy. So that's one reason. And the other reason I think is that just you get improved perfusion. I mean, we've all seen those Dr. Esselstyn's projection, his images of how this guy's coronary arteries unclogged on the plant-based diet. So I think that might be happening on the microscopic level, at the muscular level, at perfusion is improved into your muscles, perfusion is improved into your joints. And there are some studies to that effect, but I think just getting more blood flow into working muscles, and then in the hours and days after hard exercise, that blood is washing out the lactic acids. It's washing out the free radicals and all the stuff that builds up due to exercise. Just I think better perfusion. Kind of like how you hear also erectile dysfunction improves on the plant-based diet, and there are studies that affect, like you mentioned, game changers. I think it's all just better perfusion, and that's why people feel better and they can exercise hard and feel more recovered the next day and have energy. So some studies to back this up, but also some on my own thoughts and theories. And I will say I've been a benefit too, because I initially, with my cycling, I initially lost weight and my cycling improved with that. But even over the past 9 years after the weight loss, I'm pleased to say that my cycling has even gotten better and better. There's an app out there called Strava, which measures your speeds over segments of road. And I'm still, even though I just turned 50 last year, I'm still setting PRs, personal records. Like Strava will say, hey, that was the fastest time you went over that section of the road. That was your fastest time up the hill. And so that was really exciting for me. Can I brag for a little bit? Last year, so I turned 50. I did this 4 mile up. I think it's about 4 miles. 4 mile uphill route that I don't get to do very often. I did it rarely. So I had a time of 21 minutes when I was 43 years old, and I did it last year, and I had a time of 19 minutes. So as my 50-year-old self beat my 43-year-old self by 2 minutes. So again, I went into this because I enjoy cycling and I want to go fast, and I'm still getting the benefits. So I just, there's lots of good reasons to stick with the plant-based diet for me. That it felt good as a 50-year-old to beat my 43-year-old self.
Yeah, I bet. That's exciting.
10%.
That's great. I mean, that's inspirational right there. If somebody wants evidence, right?
Yes, experiment of one.
Yes. Well, let's see. I have one more question, I think. So why is it that my nephews, which hopefully are never going to see this, why is it that they're so skinny and they're young, of course, right? But then if they're eating all this junk all the time, why is it I mean, I know they have fast metabolism, but how's that even working? I saw something where they said that you might be skinny on the outside, but you're fat on the inside. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think that TOFI is the acronym, TOFI, thin outside, fat inside.
Oh,
Yeah, right. So I think that genes certainly have to play a role in that. The microbiome, actually, the bacteria that's in our guts, it's been shown that there's some bacteria that more efficiently extracts calories from food. So if you have a certain panel of microorganisms in your gut, and you eat 500 calories, maybe one group of bacteria will extract all 500 calories, and another group of bacteria might only extract 400 calories, from one person to the next. And they've actually done studies on mice, changing the gut bacteria and feeding the mice the same thing, and one mice will develop obesity and one mouse will not, eating the same amount of calories, the same composition of chow but just based on their gut bacteria, they extract the different amounts of calorie and energy from the food. So this is emerging science. So that might have something to do with it. Stay tuned. But yeah, genes and microbiome, I'd say, play a role. And then you don't know unless you can't, like maybe they're eating a lot in front of you and then they don't eat for a few days. Like you don't know exactly what someone's doing 24/7. Also, timing of eating. There's been studies that show that front loading your calories, like eating a big breakfast but a small dinner, is less likely to cause obesity than eating a small breakfast and a big dinner, because you're kind of just inactive, sleeping overnight with that big dinner, and you're sitting in your intestine. So lots of different variables.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that things will change. But I mean, hopefully things will change. But the eating will change at some point, and hopefully they won't develop into something terrible. I mean, of course, we all want the best for our families. So yeah.
Yeah. And let me just clarify that fat inside is referring to maybe they don't visibly appear to have fat in their skin or subcutaneous tissue, but might have fat deposits in their liver or fat deposits in their muscle, or fat that's been around the organs has been shown to be, you need some fat around your organs to cushion the organs, but too much fat around the organs also. These are the risk factors for developing heart disease. These are risk factors for developing diabetes. So that's what they mean by thin outside, that they don't look like that, but they have too many fat deposits in the more high risk areas.
All right. Well, we're working on educating them and and then the rest of the world. So I see that we're running out of time, but I really want you get your final thoughts in here and tell everybody where they can reach you, because if you want to follow up with Dr. Leigh, you're an amazing wealth of information here. I'm just honored that you are here, and please hit subscribe, everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This has been a great talk and really great questions. I hope I answered them all. But you can find me on drherbivore.com. I have a website, and you can find me on social media. You can join my mailing list, and appearances like this I announce on my mailing list and put some content out for free. On my website, you can also check out the e-courses, the link to the e-courses if you're interested. And then I do have a telehealth practice focused in New York and New Jersey, with two areas of interest. One, I'm trying to help families that are struggling with obesity. So I offer a 12-week program of telehealth with a plant-based chef and youth fitness expert, and the e-courses and blood tests if needed. And it's a very comprehensive, supportive 12-week program for pediatric obesity. And then a 1-month program for fine-tuning a vegan or vegetarian child's nutrition. And that might include blood tests and e-course, and really some of the concerns that were brought up here. I really want to work with families and give them the confidence to continue to raise their child plant-based by making sure that they're getting everything that they need. So that's all about me. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thanks everybody for watching. I have a lot to think about, and this is very fascinating, and we're very lucky to have you. Thank you for everything you're doing. You're you're a bright light out there in the sea of all the fast food restaurants. So I'm not going to name any of them, but yeah, in that sea, and then there's hope. So Dr. Herbivore is here to save us. So thank you so much, Dr. Leigh, and thanks to everybody for watching.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. This was wonderful.
Namaste vegan, everybody.
Namaste vegan.